The Grey Hat Beard Podcast. Hello and welcome to show 41 of Grey Hat Beards, the modern workplace podcast where we talk about all things Microsoft 365. My name's Kevin McDonald. I'm the Grey of Grey Hat Beards. I'm a solutions architect at CPS and Office Apps and Services MVP.
I'm Al Erdling. I am the Hat of Grey Hat Beards, and I'm a technical architect at the Microsoft Technology Centre in the UK.
Hi everyone, my name is Garry. I am a modern work consultant at Microsoft and also a PNP team member.
Now you can probably tell we did have a week off, so that's effectively 2 weeks off. You might be able to tell because we all seem a little bit rusty at that. So this is part one of show 41. If you haven't heard before, we split each show into two parts and release them over weeks. This one, we're going to talk about the latest news. Then in part two, I think I'm going to call it front of mind, but I haven't quite gone through. But we're going to kind of say where we think the modern workplace stuff in Microsoft's at, have a little bit of a chat about what we think's going on at the moment, what's kind of front of mind for us, and what we're looking forward to seeing come up and what we expect and hope is going to be there. So we'll have a little chat about that in part two, but we'll kick off in part one with, well, it's kind of the news that, if we're honest, I don't know. We were just talking about this beforehand, whether we're a bit jaded and kind of, yay, holidays, not quite got back into the swing of things, but it doesn't feel like there's very much out there at the moment. I don't know if we've missed things, but there's bits and pieces.
I think it's because we've had good breaks. We've turned off all electronic tools and devices and basically haven't kept up with anything that's been going on. At least that's my excuse.
I'm with Al on that one. Yeah, I agree. It's there's been announcements, but I think they're very few and far between as well. From what's happened, I think everyone's on holiday, right? Even Microsoft.
Yeah, and I think it's just that slower bit, and I don't know. It feels like this September, people feel a little bit slower getting back up speed. Quite often people in the holiday are raring to go, and there's some, but many are kind of like, this is still quite nice. So I'm sure it'll pick up a little bit. I spent the day in the sun yesterday watching cricket, and that's slowed me down a bit as well.
You've just cooked your brain a bit too much, haven't you?
Yeah, I think it has. But there has been some news, and again, we've had 4 weeks to cover, so there really should be some. First one was GitHub Codespaces has gone live, been released, available. It's been in preview for a while. I think, Garry, you had the preview, didn't you?
Yes, I've had preview for a while. We've been using it on CLI for Microsoft 365. In fact, we've had our, Codespaces environment set up for a while.
You should probably say, do you want to explain what it is for anyone who hasn't heard already?
Yes. So basically, in your project, in your repository, we can define a definition for what is a development environment. So basically, it will say, your development environment needs Node installed. It needs to run on Linux as an OS. It needs PowerShell. All those kind of cool things. We can basically define that in our project. And that enables you as a contributor to literally click a single button and a code space is generated. And that is effectively a fully functional development environment. All the code is put on there, checked out from GitHub. You literally
it's all there in the browser.
Yeah, and scenario for CLI for Microsoft 365, we're cross-platform, so we run tests on Ubuntu, Mac, Windows. We have contributors on all different platforms. Mostly actually Windows. We've got a lot of Microsoft 365 developers on Windows. We actually had an instance the other day where a test failed on Ubuntu. Didn't fail on all the other operating systems, just on Ubuntu. And that came from a developer who was using Windows, but was able to continue because he was able to use the code space. And because we've got that code space there, even though he didn't have access to code spaces, it runs on a technology that's in Visual Studio Code, and you can actually run that locally on your own machine as well. So
if you have Docker installed.
There's a few things in the background. Yeah, but it gives you that option of that, it unblocks you straight away, of being able to work on a standardized environment, and we know then that whoever uses that is going to get the same experience, and we can update that and make the experience better as well, which is good.
And I think that's the benefit, certainly the Docker side, that ability to spin up an environment without having to install a load of things in your machine, just run Docker. It will run in that isolated one. And now not only that, and in fact, Gary, I know at the moment you're recording this from an iPad, but you could actually connect an iPad, run codespaces, and have it all running within there. It really, should you be out and about, you can try and fix something where you are. And I think it's
if you've got a browser, if you have a browser, you can load that code space up, because all the hard work's being done in the cloud, right? Your code is being executed in the cloud as well. So it really is good. It's been in preview for a while now. It's obviously become generally available. It is a big game changer, this, for open source, but for enterprises as well, with GitHub Enterprise. Huge benefits can be found from using this.
And I think what's changed now. Sorry,
I was going to say, anything that makes it easier to test cross-platform. I mean, the amount of testing.
Just to get up to speed.
Question, how many browsers are you using? How many platforms? Anything that makes that easier is always going to be a benefit, isn't it? It's nice to see this coming directly into the development environment, rather than having to think about any infrastructure in the background.
Yeah, it's to get rid of the works on my machine, right? Which is, that whole phrase is like,
big thing.
It's huge, absolutely huge, especially if you think you're in a development team of maybe 10, 20 people and you're all using different configurations. When you start to
loss.
Huge, yeah.
And I think so coming back to the news, I think what's changed now, I don't know, Garry, if in the preview you could change to different types of machine. I don't think there was there? From what I saw from
you just had the option, I think, of literally hitting the button and it would load that up for you. But now obviously, as it's been scaled out, there's all sorts of different options and pricing ranges as well.
I was going to say, for me, the bad news is then the pricing. And actually, just one of the positive, when you're running in there, you can actually make it available. So if you're running a web app, you can actually connect to that web app publicly and sort of keep it running there, which is really quite nice as well. All sorts of other good things there. But then we get down to the prices. And I didn't think the prices were that bad. You sort of look at the running an 8-core machine for 72 cents an hour, and you think generally you're going to be spinning this up, and it was 10-second startup, depending how long to sort of build and things. Might need a little bit of time there, but it's a pretty good price. The one thing that got me slightly is now you've got to have a GitHub Teams or GitHub Enterprise customer, so you've got to be using the full paid version of GitHub. It's not, you talked about using it for CLI. It's kind of cut it off for a lot of people there. And I know you two work for Microsoft and get all these fun things for free, but I was a little, it would have been nice to see more of an option, I think, having made it open to so many people.
Yeah, I think I'd have to check this, but I know GitHub for Teams has had some changes in the pricing, and I know there is a free tier of GitHub for Teams as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it doesn't exclude everyone. I think it's I think some people who are maybe living in GitHub, jumping on different projects. Yes, it's open source. It doesn't mean everyone's working for free. You've got a lot of freelancers as well out there, a lot of sponsorship behind open source projects as well. It's still a good entry in. I think for me, the pricing is always there, and that's always going to be a discussion point against the benefit, like what you said, of saving that time that you would have just lost. You're spending that money anyway, really, just not as a fixed price, but the bit that I mentioned before of this technology, you can still bring and run locally. So you can still have that code space set up. But if you do want to run that environment on your own machine, then you don't have to pay for the code space. It's still an option. So I think that's still
true.
a good thing. Yeah,
I
you've got
guess I was
alternatives.
hoping maybe like open source projects that were non-commercial would get ones, but then I suppose that's most of GitHub. So
yeah, I mean, can you imagine the amount of compute that this is going to take up though across GitHub? GitHub is massive.
I can understand.
It is so big. There has to be some kind of charging mechanism somewhere.
But then I thought that maybe you could do charging. I suppose if you haven't got a team, then they haven't got a charging mechanism or something that you could have a way just to spin it up and buy bundles or something that you could get moving. But I think it was the only thing, gut reaction to that. And I think over time I was like, well, actually no, this is quite a big important thing. I can kind of see the value of it, but gut reaction was a bit like, you've given it to loads of people for free and now you're charging. Ugh, not again.
You're just a bit tight, that Kev.
Don't quite know what to say to that. I'm going to move on quickly because what I did like is they did give some free stuff at the same time as they announced GitHub codespaces, and that was, I've suddenly forgot what it's called, GitHub Dev. So it's the ability to kind of take your repo. I've got a very nice one here called the CLI for Microsoft 365, and I love this. And I know, Gary, you hadn't seen this at first, but if I press dot on the keyboard, it effectively loads up that web editor on the screen, and you can get started with VS Code. Obviously, you can go in dark mode for that. And there I've basically got VS Code there running in the browser, and I can go and make edits to that and work on my repo within there. Obviously, I would go in the dev branch. Don't worry, Gary. On that, but I think it's quite nice, and because there's been quite a few times, especially we've got the Grey Hat Beard etiquette guide has been in there, and I've kind of worked on things in there in Markdown and treating them a bit like documents, and it's always been a little bit fiddly, especially if you're working on a few docs. You jump around and it's easier to pull it over into the code, whereas this, no, it's right there.
Yeah, this is great. I think the first time I saw it was basically you take any GitHub address and you change the .com to .dev, and that was like, oh, this is amazing. And then Joel Rodriguez, the MVP, basically said, yeah, but just press dot. And I was like, what? He pressed dot. I was like, oh, this is magical. But yeah.
Any non-developers listening, yes, developers can be easily pleased. Just occasionally, those little things.
But by cutting out those few steps to just have one, that's it, isn't it? Yeah, just to make it quicker.
Yeah,
especially the ones that not everyone knows, that keyboard shortcuts. We love those little ones that kind of no one else knows about.
Definitely, yeah.
Makes us feel better.
But I mean,
shallow, meaningless lives.
That integration of VS Code directly into GitHub is just perfect, because it does solve that problem of, if you just go to a GitHub repo, you just want to make a change to a single page and you think, oh, actually I need to reflect that change on others. You really had to just clone that locally and go through the Git process. Now you don't have to. You can search that code base. I used it the other day to just create new issues in our project to basically say, oh, we've got some references here to some beta endpoints that we're using for Graph that we can now update for V1. And I was just able to select that bit of code and create an issue directly from the code base. And I was just like, that's what you want. You're making it easy for me. And if it makes it easier to maintain, I can spend more time doing other things as well. Exactly. But yeah, it's great to see that integration taking place. It really is.
So you mentioned there you've got time to go and do other things. That brings us neatly on to one of the updates from Viva this week. Look at that segue, seamless.
It's like it's planned this sometimes, isn't it?
Never.
Only sometimes, but yeah.
Planned sometimes, yeah. That sums it up nicely. So yeah, anyone who's fed up the developer stuff, we've finished with that. Don't worry. This was an interesting one and it seemed to creep in. I hadn't noticed this until the email came out. So Viva's, in fact, Cortana's been sending out these regular emails about saying how you're doing today. Are you keeping enough focus time? Have you been keeping up with your tasks? Are there any tasks you've missed? Was it your daily briefing? And they used to come from Cortana. And I thought it was interesting. They are keeping the Cortana brand alive. But no, as of today, they now come from Microsoft Viva. I think hopefully you'll just about see that if you're looking there. I'll try and zoom a little bit on there. If I can remember what that is on the Mac. No, I can't. But yeah, you can see for those watching on there, the emails now come from Microsoft Viva. The other one, interesting, I had mine today and it said, what was it, your private update, I think, or something like that. So let me bring up the mail on there. But it definitely talked about being a private review, which I thought was quite interesting. Obviously, hammering home that note that this is just for you. This is a private update, making sure that people realise that from the workplace analytics. But yeah, again, seemed to creep up, this one.
I think they'd been putting the prompts in to say that the branding was going to change, but yeah, it popped in and I noticed it this morning. I didn't know anything about the article that had been published, but I did notice that it had changed its format slightly and coming from Microsoft Viva. But I think this is where my analytics. It was always planned that it was going to be converging into the Viva Insights app in Teams, and this is one element of it. There's this daily notifications that a lot of people, that's their first recognition that actually there is something out there that is potentially giving them helpful advice.
Absolutely. And I gotta say, I love these emails. I think they're brilliant. A number of times that it's picked up on tasks in my emails that I haven't necessarily done, or it's given me a reminder to do those without actively saying they are tasks. It's realised from the text that's in there what should be and shouldn't be. I think it's really good. So
I think it just reinforces.
Brand.
Yeah, I think it just reinforces the good habits, right, of going through, and it just reminds you about booking your focus time and learning time as well. And I think there's like a 15-minute break in there as well. You've also got your daily email and your monthly email now, as well as a reflection to say, look, here's what you've actually been doing over the last month as well. So then you can kind of see, well, how are you collaborating? I think the really interesting one, I think Jeremy Stake actually tweeted about this a few weeks ago, was he was using that email to reflect on how he was engaged in meetings and making a conscious effort to be more present in the meetings, because he could see his metrics of, was I replying to emails and things when I should have been in the meeting? And they're really powerful, that you can actually change your habits based on that. And it's that reminder to say, you're actually doing this. Maybe you need to take a look at what you're doing.
What I liked about what he said, he also said if he wasn't engaged, then why the hell was he at the meeting? Which I thought was quite good.
Exactly.
Well, I think that's it, isn't it? When you kind of look at it, because one of the stats that jumped out for me was the amount of why you're not having your quiet time, your focus time.
Yeah.
Oh, and this much time is taken up with other meetings, and this much time is taken up with emails. Like, 85% of meetings going in over quiet time. That explains a lot.
Hello, Charlie, if you're listening. Yes, please stop booking meetings over my quiet time.
And that was exactly it. I turned to one of my colleagues and went, "Oh, look, it's got your name on it." And he went, "No, it doesn't." No, it just says that I've had meetings booked over it. But that would be great if it did. That would be a great little enhancement. Yeah. These are the biggest culprits for booking time over your quiet time.
Ooh.
It's you. Ah, damn it.
Yeah.
The hit list.
Again. You win again this month.
Yeah. No, so I like that. Had a few Teams updates. My favourite one, and I have been waiting for this to go live for a while, is the custom together mode scenes on there, and I finally got to do, for those watching on video, I will put links in the show notes, but I finally got to put myself in the Muppets and have that Muppet background. I do have a 42 person one as well as a 5 person one, and you can kind of have different numbers of people appearing as if your whole meeting is in the Muppets. I can't remember when we were talking earlier, Gary, I said, but I tried on one of the P&P calls to see if I could turn it on there, but no, unfortunately I didn't have access. I might have to get you to join and send it over and see if we can get the P&P team showing us Muppets. I thought would be quite good. But I probably should say I haven't entirely investigated the copyright edges of this, so do be cautious with any use of this, as Visa did notice. But I did get overexcited and decided that Bohemian Rhapsody was also needed. So funnily enough, we were looking before this. One of the things I was wondering is, could we have a grey hat beard one? Because the one of the things I don't like particularly is the fact when I'm sort of showing the screen. If you are watching video, we show the screen, it comes back to our faces, and it'd be quite nice if we could kind of organise exactly where our faces go and stuff like that. Unfortunately, when you record it, doesn't record that together mode, so that's not in any recordings, which is maybe something I'll add to the future wish list.
Yeah, if the product group are listening.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a big article on Teams of things that come out, and that was one of the things they mentioned. The other one that I saw today was you can now get Teams in CarPlay. So if you've got Apple CarPlay, I've had this issue a few times where you just want to join a meeting or have a sort of phone call. Obviously, you can phone people, but to be able to join a meeting, especially when you're stuck in traffic and can't get into there. Obviously, it won't share screens or anything like that. It's not going to breach any certainly UK rules around that. But you can join that meeting, mute and speak as if it was a phone call. And I think that's good. I think it'd be interesting to see if they also add like read out emails where they'll do the same with Teams chats at all. But I think it's a nice functionality.
I think there's a lot of potential there. You know, if you're being called via Teams is one thing.
Yeah.
But if you've got a meeting reminder come up and you need to join it, being able to do that hands-free whilst driving, yeah.
I guess this also increases, you've got your phone numbers that you can associate with your accounts and things as well. So it's not just, we're not talking about like online Teams meetings. We're actually talking about telephone calls as well, right? In the car that you can take through Teams.
I haven't tried it yet. I think that there was only limited functionality initially, and I think that was just joining meetings. So before I get too excited and people think they can do that, I would double check that. I haven't actually. I've only seen pictures of it. I did try and find a link with any details, but I haven't seen anything yet.
I shall have to try.
My plan is to go for a little drive tomorrow and see how it works. And I'd be interested. I assume there's no video, so it can't even have your video, even if you can't see others or anything. I don't know, but I assume not. That would be a little bit.
It'd be nice if you just put up a little logo of a car, underneath you, so that people know that you're actually driving. Oh yes, they're muted because they're driving. Yeah.
That's why they're swearing at that person. Yeah. Makes sense.
Oh come on, nobody's ever done that on a Teams call whilst driving, surely.
Moving on.
I'm trying to remember if I did once. Again, Charlie, if you are listening. So there's a few other nice ones. I think I'm one of the ones. I'm on the TAP program for Teams, so I thought this had actually been out for a while, but apparently not. But the presenter mode and side-by-side options are now kind of rolling out further, and I quite like this. I think you need to watch what you've got on your PowerPoint decks to make sure you haven't got too much in the bottom right, but you can stand there and really have where you want your face to kind of be front of focus if you're doing a presentation, and having that either overlapped or having it just behind is quite nice. And I've definitely done the kind of weather forecaster pointing at different bits that way. Once I can work out which way's left and right, it's pretty good.
Yeah, you definitely do need to plan your presentations to accommodate your face down there. Otherwise, you do end up just blocking everything, don't you? Which isn't such an effective presentation method, when you've kind of your face is overpinning the important information that you've put on the slide.
Just a slight aside, I've just noticed that where I had the github.dev over there, I've got the GitHub icon with a little VS Code icon there, which I hadn't noticed. So anyway, moving on. But yeah, it's a slightly gimmicky thing, and I would say another one that definitely doesn't show up in recordings. And what's the other thing I noticed? That you can't take screenshots of it either, which was quite funny, because I went to take a screenshot and show people it, just showed what was behind. I was like, that's not what I was expecting. So interesting to know why on that. And I did try it on Mac and Windows. It was the same thing. So whatever they're using there blocks that, which was intriguing. There's a few more updates, so more live captions and live transcripts. If you haven't seen, you can get live transcription if you don't have the meeting isn't in a Teams channel. If you have it in a Teams channel, you can't turn on transcriptions, which as we hit a few times on Grey Hat Beard. It's a bit of a pain in the backside. So we might change ours around to not be in a Teams channel. Having Microsoft said, make sure you do things in Teams channels. It's the right thing to do. And then stop the functionality working on there, which is good. Got live starting recording and live transcripts simultaneously, and you can have those auto start as well, so you can turn them on by default, which is good. One I can't remember if it's on here, but I know we talked about quickly before the show was also that ability to archive meeting recordings after a certain amount of time as well. So if you are turning on that auto record, it's going to get pretty chunky, I think. So good to have that functionality as well on there. Some UC stuff. I'm sure some people are interested in that. If you're heading to Comsverse, fantastic. Come and talk to me and abuse me for saying that. But the dual tone multi-frequency support for virtual desktop infrastructure, I'm sure it's very helpful for someone on there. Same with the Microsoft Teams Room updates on Android. Some of these were quite interesting. So support for sharing via HDMI ingest. I was quite surprised that wasn't a feature already if you have one of those devices. To me, that seems to be plugging another laptop with HDMI you couldn't do previously, which I was pretty sure you could. We haven't been rude to the UC community. I might need to ask them a question at one point. So I'll speak to them quickly before they realise. But yeah, a few nice features there, including 1080p resolution for outgoing video, which is more than you get on the Mac. I found you get a pretty low resolution on Teams on the Mac.
Yeah, it was the resolution 720p, isn't it, in general?
If you're lucky.
Yeah. But yeah. Yeah, because I think a lot of people have gone, oh, I'll get a new webcam and I'll get like 4K. And it's like, yeah, you're kind of spending more money than you need to, really. Because
only an idiot would do that.
Yeah. Future proofing, wasn't it, Kev?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of knew it wouldn't be 4K, but I did think it'd be a little bit better than it was. So yeah, a few updates on devices, a few new ones. There's the Together mode.
Interestingly, for all of those Teams Room devices, I think that's making things easier for people to buy more kit, isn't it? So they don't have to buy all-in-ones; they can buy the modular kits. I think all of these changes just enhance what they can do, and potentially with existing kit as well, to make it more versatile. Which, as organisations are moving back into the office and having more hybrid, this is coming up a lot. You know, how do I make the most of the kit that I actually have in place?
I'm sure you both listened to the chat I had with Randy and Mark in the last recording we did, but we had a really good chat there about the sort of the importance of these hybrid rooms and what these devices. Again, I'm mocking it, but I do think it is important. There are a lot of cases where having these right devices really makes a difference, and as people go back. And I think having as we said there, is having ways to be able to support where you've been having that chat, you've been connecting with devices, and you're going to be in a room. How that's all going to work together.
And things like when you're talking about the transcription, having the ability to just plug in a speaker that has the ability to identify who's talking.
Yeah.
That's a hardware change. That's not necessarily just a software change.
Yeah, a little bit of both on that one. Again, something we talked about with Randy, as you remember from having listened to it. Although interesting, I can't remember who I was talking to, just dropping you in it there, about the Teams Together mode extensibility. And we were wondering, because to me this suits hybrid working, where you could have kind of a group of people who are in a room, and then you could position the other people so you all look together when you were looking on that Together mode. But and I was wondering what would happen if you have multiple faces. Now, before the show, we were trying it out a little bit with a kind of grey hat beard background. And for those looking on video, Garry and myself and Al have all got our little avatars next to us. And he was occasionally picking those up. But it was treating it as one person in that kind of region. So it wasn't treating it as two different people and putting in different places. So be interesting to see how those Together modes evolve with those kind of hybrid ones, so where you've got a batch of people together and then you kind of plug in people to the side of it almost. I think it's quite a nice way of doing it.
That's a different problem to solve, isn't it? Not really thought about that, having not had a hybrid meeting for quite a while, and then thinking back to one I had recently, and it was just one camera and lots of people around a desk, and then people who are remote have got their individual little screens, and it's like, why wouldn't you try and break out the room as well that's in there? Otherwise you end up with this complete disparity between the two.
I think that's where some of the hardware vendors are making new cameras that will do that will actually try and identify the faces and pick them up and push them through as separate feeds, so that you can actually see them.
Oh, really? So the hardware would split it out from that. Interesting.
So this would be interesting. Maybe everyone in the physical room who's together gets a little kind of a like and a heart and a hand up button that they can press and go like, I'm going to put
like a physical one.
Well, yeah.
Are you confusing this with like X Factor or Britain's Got Talent?
Potentially, yeah. Well, you could have a golden buzzer, but I was thinking, if you want to have consistency, right, between all of the experiences. Yeah. In remote meetings, I'm kind of getting used to putting the thumb up and clapping and stuff. We've done this in the community calls as well. It's added to the experience, and now you're thinking, well, hang on, that's kind of going away a bit, but why can't we keep that?
Well, I think this is where they're looking to have. Actually, I'll turn off the background so we can see each other better. I think this is where they're talking about having devices like having your phone connected to the meeting to be able to interact,
companion
even
devices,
have that back channel chat that goes on there.
Yeah.
I think for me, the challenge is going to be, how do you keep people focused? Because then you're more likely to be seeing other messages and other mails coming through from that, which I know everyone just sit there playing on their phone and doing that anyway, but you're almost actively encouraging that to happen. So it's going to be interesting, whether they can turn on a focus mode that sort of blocks other notifications within there, or I don't know. But I think that will be the challenge of keeping people focused. I guess it's the same as when people are sat at the desks, but be interesting.
Prevent alt-tab between different applications.
Yeah, exactly.
Focus mode, right? Just make it one whole screen, and that's it. Just I think that would work. But I think the companion devices. I think we've been able to do that for a while, right? Like I'm on an iPad, but I could easily have a laptop next to me and share. You could do the screen sharing through that, but I'm actually interacting through a different device. And I think maybe that'll just be using that more.
See if they make it easier to support where you're logged in with the same account, turning off sound and things. So beforehand we were joining, and it took over the Bluetooth on my headphones and things, and then I had to swap the speaker there and things like that. So be able to join in a kind of non-audio mode almost, doesn't feel like there's quite support for that, but that'd be useful. I'm not going to share the screen again. I thought one other thing that was very interesting in the article. I know none of us particularly deal with the US government cloud instance, but a lot of the things they were updating were going to be rolled out to GCC at the same time. So that presenter mode and things like that. It feels like that kind of lag that has often hit the GCC. They seem to be trying to break that down a little bit. And I know, sometimes it's been a year, 18 months before features has hit that. I thought that was really good news, and I like the fact they're trying to keep those things together. Other little bits of news. I thought this was an interesting side one. I know we don't generally hit on the kind of consumer side of Microsoft that much, but the fact that Microsoft's hiring the former Uber exec to lead the consumer apps effort, and I know he's moving over to Jeff Teeper's world, which, and I know Microsoft Cloud Show and a few others have been talking a bit about this, so I don't want to kind of regurgitate what they've done, but it says to me that and I know with Windows 11 there's going to be a Teams consumer version of it, a lightweight one. This seems to be a sort of a refocus on that, and saying that despite Microsoft going up and down and seeing the enterprise, they still see Teams as being a consumer product in some way, or at least the brand is there in some way as well, which is intriguing. Not sure I 100% agree, but I can see why they've done it.
They purchased Skype, which was a purely consumer tool, really, wasn't it, when they purchased it?
Yeah.
So I think
and then they used all that.
They used everything, but I think the interesting part there is how they, re-establish themselves as a consumer provider in those sorts of spaces when people are so used to, all of the mobile apps that they're using on Android and iOS, and why would they go to Microsoft? So that will be an interesting challenge to see whether they can get back to that, or whether people will persistently think, well, actually, Microsoft for work, other things for other scenarios. So it will be an interesting challenge to see how they do. Maybe Windows Phone will come back.
Oh, Bill Ayres will be happy.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Yeah, no, what I'm saying is
because his current phone will still be supported. Or...
Well, exactly. It'll be, it'll be ahead of the trend, ahead of the curve.
No, I think it'd be good, and I think there's quite a bit of work to do. Certainly, from speaking with friends and family, the idea of not doing Zoom but doing Teams calls is kind of, why would we do that? So I think there's quite a lot of work is needed to get that going.
Yeah, I think it's the two different use cases of the products, right? Zoom is just very much it's simple, it's video calling, right, and a little bit of messaging. Whereas Teams is a bit more of a workspace, a bit more of sharing of files and things like that. And there's probably too many features in there at the moment for the personal kind of usage, maybe. But it's there, and it's part of the platform, and there is a lot of benefit in that as well. Being able to store those files together, and again, it's if you get to that situation where you're doing more than Zoom calls and you've got a Dropbox and you've got all these other things, you end up with 3 or 4 different services where Teams could provide it all in one. I just think it's maybe, unless you're using it in organizations, it's maybe a bit more difficult to see, okay, well, what do I get in Teams? But I think it'll come. Again, it's marketing right. I think you get the marketing right. And
I think, and the product, certainly if they're talking not confusing between the main one and a consumer version and things as well. But yes.
What do you mean? Not like OneDrive for business, and Skype for business, and those sorts of confusing. Yeah. Okay. So we just got Teams and Teams. Yeah.
Exactly. It's all about Teams. That's all you need to worry about. It's all about Teams. So talking on one other subject that's not about Teams. I'm not going to spend too long on this, but I thought it was an interesting one. I'm a big fan of Cosmos DB. But then this article popped up about how thousands of Azure customers' databases were hacked into, and how they managed to use a vulnerability. It was actually within the Jupyter notebooks for Cosmos DB, which then gave them access to the primary keys, and effectively that gives you access to everything. So interesting, well worth a read, and sort of how they got into thing and understand. If you do have Cosmos DB, there's also a link in there on how to refresh your key and make sure you do that, because it does seem like there's, I think if you're not using Jupyter notebooks, there's less vulnerability, but there are still ways to get into it because they're often turned on by default anyway. So yeah, if you are using Cosmos, make sure you give that a look and change your keys.
Yeah, I think when I saw this, it was at first, oh my God, this is huge, because this has actually happened. Security of the cloud. This is, everyone's fears about moving to the cloud in the first place, right? The losing control, and you're trusting Microsoft to, make sure that the security is top notch. The other side of that is, just because you're running things in the cloud and Microsoft are managing those services doesn't mean that you shouldn't put best practices in. So if you're using keys, you should be refreshing them. And you should put things in place to do that. That's then, you safeguarding yourself. The other side of that is then, and we've talked about this before, and I'm a big fan of it, is using managed identity, where then you don't even need to know the keys. And you're using a different way of authenticating. So, I think it was there was two sides to this story for me. Yes, it's bad that it's happened, but there are, good things that can come out of this as well, and good reminders.
Well, I think that's the thing, isn't it? Azure is not just going to be secure because it is the cloud. You're put it as soon as you put something into it. Well, that's it. You're potentially adding vulnerabilities every time you add a new asset, unless you configure it, unless you use the right tools in the right place. And I think that's always been part of the responsibility of the owner of the resource, not the owner of the platform. The owner of the platform has different responsibilities.
Yeah.
Those public IP addresses, they need to be secured in the same way that any other IP address would be secured.
Absolutely. Cool. Right, I think that's the end of the news. A couple of ego posts and events coming in. One, I've been working a little bit on a repo of kind of search connectors. So I created one for Twitter a while back with a blog post, but it was pretty painful to go and reset that up. So I've now got a nice ARM template for redeploying that and details on how to set it up. And about 2/3 of the way of doing a similar thing for Dynamics as well. So part of the reason I mention that now is anyone's got ideas on where they want Microsoft Search to be able to connect into other things. And I know from the roadmap, Viva Topics is pretty likely to be using the same mechanism as well. So if you want to be able to connect to other things there, apart from the 10 default ones, and you've seen some Microsoft Search ones, have a look at this, give me a shout, and we'll be open to ideas for other things, because with Logic Apps, it's pretty easy to get those triggers going. So I would love to build up a little bit of a library that we can get a community library of things going from that. So definitely give me a shout. A few events coming up. It feels like we've been talking about this forever, so I'm so excited. And sorry, that sounds a bad thing. I mean, in a good way, because it keeps getting delayed because of COVID and things. And we're only 10 days. Kept getting delayed. Yeah, thank you. But now there will be an in-person conference in the UK around Microsoft Teams. I know Al and I will be there, and it's going to be very exciting. We were talking just beforehand about one of Al's former colleagues who almost giggled with excitement when we heard Al was going to be there as well, and he's got his tickets. So there are very few tickets. Damien, hello, if you're listening, by the way. Sorry for dropping you in that. There are very few. I think there was 15 tickets for the in-person last thing I heard. So if you are in the UK or even can fly in now, I think there's more and more green countries. I know we do have various people. I think Yannick Riekmans is due to fly in, and a few others. It is a hybrid event, so if you can't make it, or you're just not comfortable, there is a virtual option to come and watch us all there. It's 2 days, one that's more about collaboration. I think it's on this list a bit further down, and 1 day that's more the kind of UC there we go, collab day and config day, which is a bit more of the UC side. So come to one, come to all, come and say hello if you see us around. I will have some stickers as well, I think, as well. I was even tying with the idea. Actually, remind me later. I need to speak to you two about possibly getting some more stickers, but it should be great. And if Teams isn't quite your thing, the good news is there is another conference coming up down in the Aegeus Bowl, the Hampshire Cricket Team's base, the South Coast Summit. It's only 39 days, 11 hours and 58 minutes away, which is really quite scary, and it's probably giving Aaron and Nathan palpitations just think about how close there is and how much there is to do. But be another one, and that's much broader, covering all the Microsoft space. And I know, Al, you and I speaking, Gary's sadly not going to be there anymore, which is very sad. Hopefully we can get you on remotely to do a Grey Hat Beer recording. There is a podcast track, so a few of the, I think it's mostly UK based podcasts now, come along, and we'll be live recording there, so come and say hello to your favourite podcast as well.
And there are pre-cons there as well, aren't there?
There are pre-cons, yes. We should advertise those. So I think there is a hackathon going on. I just think, do we need to register for the pub quiz? I don't know if I have done that.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I've just realised on that one. Yeah, so there is a pub quiz on the Saturday night as well. There are some pre-summit ones on robotic process automation, a couple of strange guys doing security and compliance for a full day of workshop, Azure, data and AI, Teams apps. There's 3 even stranger people doing Viva and Syntax on there. There is a charge for these. It's £50, which I'm sure if you've ever worked with consultancies and tried to get a full day out of them, it's pretty unlikely you're going to get that for £50. So really good value on there, and just enough to cover the cost of the venues for those. So do keep an eye out. Do go onto the site, go on South Coast Summit, scroll down. There's links there for signing up on Eventbrite. And talking of summits, the Scottish Summit has all been announced. So 25th and 26th of February. If you are a speaker, the Sessionized call for speakers link is on there. If you're not a speaker, but you've thought about doing it maybe, here is your chance, because I know they've got a kind of new speaker track. So there is a good opportunity to get involved in that. Alan and I were talking at the beginning. We're pretty sure they're saying that it's in person. So it's going to be in Glasgow. I don't know if it's going to be hybrid or what. I'm not entirely sure. I will try and find out more.
It certainly said that it was had a physical location.
Yeah. So I think that will be the aim.
2 days.
Whether they're crossing fingers or not. Yeah. Hopefully by then we'll all be back to normal, won't we? Hey. We can dream.
We can.
But yeah, I think it'll be a good event. I've signed up and I'll be one of the volunteers helping out with that in some way. So should be good. And yeah, lots of great sessions, I'm sure. We'll wrap up the news there. So thank you very much for covering and listening to that. Stick around, because next week we'll be probably just chatting on much like this on what's kind of front of mind for us and what we think is coming up. So do listen, and speak to you next week. Thanks a lot.